Hello everyone, it's King Sloth back again with another reaction video. Today we're reacting to War on a Glacier, the highest altitude battlefield on Earth. So this is about the Indian army getting into an assault with the Pakistani army in the Himalayas. I think it's 6,500 feet above sea levels. And it's because after the Indo-Pakistani war, they separated the land of the Himalayas, but rather than actually working out the contour lines, they decided to put a line straight through these different three sets of glaciers. So they fought for terrain, and it was not the nicest battlefield to be involved in. But for those who don't know me, my name's King Sloth. I was in the British Army for a couple of years before transferring across to the Royal Air Force, where I still currently serve. I do reaction videos on the side and also do daily video logs. We were aiming for like 4K by the end of the year. Be smashing it. Get the notifications on, hit that like button, and comment down below what I should react to next. But you know what? You're not interested in that. You're interested in the reaction. So let's get into it.
It was April 13th, 1984, when the Indian Armed Forces launched a military campaign on one of the most unlikely battlefields on Earth, a glacier towering 6,500 meters above sea level. Their mission was to take full control of the area, a remote and uninhabited stretch of the disputed territory known as the Karakoram Range of the Himalayas that straddled the India-Pakistan border. After decades of push and pull between the two countries over the exact parameters of the line that divides them, the goal of the Special Indian Armed Forces was to once and for all claim the Sakhalin Glacier for India. The Indian troops, led by Lieutenant General Prem Nath Hoon, would do this by taking certain strategic points along the three traversable passes through the glacier. It's worth noting that this was a place no military had previously considered to be strategically significant. To access the Sakhalin Glacier, the second largest non-polar glacier on Earth, the Indian forces would be airdropped into the eastern Saltoro Mountains, a sub-range of the Karakoram which contains the ice field. To avoid drawing the attention of their rival, Pakistan, on the
So we also know from previous videos we've done about the Indian military and the Pakistani military. The Pakistani military like to hold terrain high in the mountains to make it easier to set up ambushes for the Indian military working through the terrain. We also know just how horrible that terrain is to work through, where snow doesn't last as snow for very long. It turns to ice, which is horrible to work through, and the actual terrain to work on is so dangerous, especially the amount of kit and with live rounds going off. It's scary.
other side of the mountains. They would then proceed the rest of the way on foot, a grueling climb into the icy unknown. To complete their mission, the soldiers faced monstrous weather, bitter cold, and uneven, dangerous terrain. To secure the area and the border for India, the greatest threat would not be the army of Pakistan, but would instead be nature and the glacier itself. It would be anything but easy.
So when it mentions about the terrain being dangerous, obviously they're working on a glacier. So for those who haven't watched previous videos or any history on working on glaciers, there are a lot of different situations where there's crevasses where you can be walking along solid ground for a long period of time, and you can think it's still solid ground, but in reality it's a thin sheet of ice and a straight drop down. And more often than not, it's more risky to try and save that person than what it is just to be like, they're dead. Because the fall would be that deep, and then trying to get them out and having the right amount of kit to get them out and the medical care to get them off the mountain, it's too risky, especially in a situation where you're waiting for the Pakistani military also. It's a very risky situation to be involved in.
The controversial border in question was established in 1949 in the aftermath of partition. It was conceived in the Karachi Agreement, which itself ended the Indo-Pakistani War of 1947, an armed conflict between the two newly independent nations for territory in the shared and highly disputed Kashmir region. Much of the United Nations designated line was carefully and deliberately plotted. However, the easternmost portion of the line ran through Himalayan territory so remote and so high in elevation that it was considered uninhabitable and thus of little tangible value. As such, no one in 1949 thought twice about drawing this portion of the ceasefire line as a simple straight line, not taking any of the actual geography or terrain into due account. The line began at a point designated merely as NJ9842 and ran directly north through 3 glaciers, the Remo, the Baltoro, and the largest of them all, the Sakhalin. Decades of fighting ensued between India and Pakistan. In 1972, the ceasefire line was relitigated and rebranded as the Line of Control, or LOC, as part of the Shuchetgar Agreement of that year. The LOC acknowledged.
I believe I've done a reaction on the line of control. I think they're Angels of the Mountains, I think they're called, for the Indian military, and you literally watch some heavy artillery making sure that no one from the Pakistani military crosses this line. And it is, once again, I mentioned many times already in this video, the terrain that they're on, it's horrible to work on. And then you've got the threat of each side blowing you with smithereens. Why would you cross it? Or why would you even try to cross it? The risks far outweigh the reward.
Slight modifications to the original line, changes that resulted from various military advances made by both sides since the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971. However, the straight line pointing north through the glaciers remained untouched. Pakistan had their own plans to subtly move the line in their favor. In their own maps and literature, they began to draw the line as moving slightly west from NJ 9842 to a position west of the Karakoram Pass instead of directly north. These changes, over time, slowly crystallized into fact, even in maps drawn objectively outside of Pakistan's borders. International mountaineering enthusiasts, some of the only other parties involved who coveted the remote terrain north of NJ 9842, began to draw the line according to the altered Pakistani map. To further stoke these flames, the Pakistani government began to allow foreign mountaineering expeditions to launch from their side of the mountains throughout the 1970s.
So it's almost like it's indoctrined into the Pakistani education that this line that was previously made, it's not right, it's wrong. It's actually, this is the real line. And because it's went through that many years of history and teaching new people that this is the line that have changed the maps, they're not going to know any different, especially if that's how the way they were taught. And it sort of makes sense why India have been like, what are you doing? Why are you trying to come onto our side of this ceasefire line, the line of control? It's silly for Pakistan to think that there wouldn't be any consequence to this.
This was welcome news to the mountaineers, as the various passes and trails on the Pakistan side of the mountains were far less steep and treacherous than those on the Indian side. In 1978, Narendra Kumar, one of India's own top mountaineers and a colonel in the Indian Army, informed India's Director of Military Operations that Pakistan had for years been allowing foreign expeditions to launch from their side of the Karakoram mountain region. Kumar greatly encouraged India to follow suit, or else they would lose the contentious land battle once and for all. That same year, Kumar himself led one of the first expeditions from the Indian side, with assistance from the Indian Air Force, who supplied food and equipment, as well as an air landing over the rocky foothills directly onto the glacier itself. The India-Pakistan rivalry was reignited yet again. To counter India's newly formed interest in contesting the border, Pakistan pushed their interpretation of the LOC even further by granting a Japanese climbing expedition access to the peak of the Remo Glacier, a high point located east of the Sakhalin Glacier. It was an area occupied by China but claimed by India, and notably, one that Pakistan had shown no authority over up to that point.
That's almost Pakistan's way of provoking India, I guess, into being like, well, you can attack if you want, but it's not us that you'd be attacking the Japanese. Even though the Pakistan's gave permission for the Japanese to walk on land owned by China, which is forced by, it all just seems like the Pakistan government, the military, are almost poking and prodding, trying to get their different ideas of how the map should be out there. And if enough countries agree with them and follow along with that, they'll sort of join in with it. And it'll get to the point where India can be like, well, we've not actually had our group over that pit of terrain in so long. We don't really need to fight for it because we haven't been there. I think that's what Pakistan's trying to get at.
The Indian government saw the potential for the Pakistani armed forces to use the Remo Glacier as a strategic link in a trade route leading to China. It was something of the last straw. India decided it was time to seize the area once and for all.
Megadoot.
A plan was formed late in 1983 to airdrop Indian forces onto the glacier as soon as the weather would allow in the following spring. A training camp was established for the Indian Army unit at the High Altitude Warfare School, a training and research facility built by the Indian Army in 1948. To this day, it's one of the most famous facilities of its kind in the world, and special soldiers from Western countries often attend the school for training in operations in severe cold. On the Pakistani side, a meeting was held in December.
I know of a few lads who have actually been to that school and they've said how amazing it is. Even we get groups of Gurkhas come who have went through the Gurkha selection, but previously have went to this mountaineering school and have said that their actual selection to become a Gurkha was easier because they'd done this. And that's crazy to think about. They're the Gurkhas who literally are well known for being working in mountains and disgusting terrains. Have went to this school to get even better at their job before they went into the British military. Madness.
December 1983, under the supervision of President General Zia-ul-Haq. He gave direct orders to his commander of the northern areas, Major General Ayir Dad Khan, to preempt all Indian attempts to occupy the passes surrounding the Sakhalin Glacier. General Zia authorized that the Pakistani army march in and seize the passes before May of 1984, as soon as weather conditions would allow for the use of helicopters in the treacherous area. To patrol the glacier, the Indian forces would need the right equipment. They required, at a minimum, thermal coats and pants, balaclavas to cover their faces, tents, ice axes, goggles, and insulated boots with spikes. Much of this equipment was only available in Europe, and so Lieutenant General Hoon, the leader of the operation, contacted an outfitter in London in the hopes of acquiring all the necessary equipment. But the supplier in London informed Hoon that they would not be able to supply the winter apparel and gear that the Indian Army requested, because a large order for over 150 pieces of equipment had already been placed by the Pakistani military.
So that's like you are now like aware of what their plans. So you're like, okay, well we'll get Indian military together. We'll get up a little operation. We'll patrol our area that's actually ours by law. We'll get all the kit together. We'll get on the mountains. Oh no, we can't buy any. Let's go over here. London. Oh no, you can't buy any. Pakistan have bought it all. You're like, wait a second. Why are they buying so much kit? I guess by that point you are aware what's going to happen and you start to prepare for that eventuality.
Of course, now the Indian Army had advance warning of Pakistan's own intent to launch an offensive on the glacier. Additional intelligence received by the Indian military that winter informed them that Pakistan planned to start their operation on April 17, 1984. As a result, India decided to move their operation forward. They would begin 4 days earlier. April 13th would be India's Glacier Take-Back D-Day. The Indian Army mission was given the name Operation Meghdoot, after Meghaduta, a divine cloud messenger character from a 4th century Sanskrit play. April 13th was chosen deliberately because it was Vaisakhi, a holiday in the Hindu religion, despite 13 being an unlucky number in India. The trained soldiers were airlifted using Indian Air Force planes into the foothills of the Saltoro region. Once atop the glacier, the troops divided into subunits and were deployed to the various corners of the glacier to secure the 3 vital passes on its western side. Lieutenant General Hoon sent the Northern Command further up the Saltoro Ridge west of...
That almost makes a lot more sense. You have the information that they're going to come down and then do exactly what the Indian military are doing. Pakistan would have came on that day and did exactly the same. They would have set up different subunits, got each corner of the glacier and been like, this is ours, do not come past this area. They've dug in. They're in the defensive positions. It's hard to take over, especially in that sort of terrain. Whereas India's went, well, we've got information they're coming on this day. We'll get set up sooner. So they're staying one step ahead on the basis of having that information.
To the Sakhalin Glacier. The Ladakh Scouts, the special unit of the Indian Army nicknamed the Snow Warriors, thanks to their prowess in mountain warfare, were deployed with a battalion of the Kumaon region into the Zojila Pass. The Snow Warriors duly marched west for days with full battle packs on their backs, in case they faced Pakistani opposition. By April 13th, roughly 300 Indian soldiers were entrenched in the area's peaks and crevices. As a result, by the time the Pakistanis made their push to secure the area launched in May, it became immediately apparent that they were too late. The Indians already controlled the major mountain passes, but victory did not come without a cost. Temperatures below 30 degrees Celsius made it immensely difficult for the Indian troops to move, to breathe, to even communicate. The Indian soldiers ran the risk of high-altitude pulmonary edema, hypothermia, and amnesia. Men perished in the punishing terrain, froze, succumbed to disease, or fell to their deaths in whiteout conditions.
But this is what I mean by saying, like, the Indian people are so patriotic. They're given an order and they'll follow it. Like, you look at is it the Battle of Satagahan? Where the Indian Hindus, they held off the group. I think it was like a version of the Al Qaeda for so long. To the point where I think there was like 5 of them left, and the officer went, "We'll stay and fight to the last man," and they stayed and they fought with everything they had. This is the same sort of situation. They know that the chances of them dying are really high, but they're dug in. They have the best like defensive position against them, not physically, but also with the weather conditions and how Pakistan are they're going to attack and then run back, whereas India they're entrenched. They'll be stuck in that whiteout condition, freezing, illness, but they'll stay there because that's what they've been told to do.
The soldiers who survived later complained of memory loss, high blood pressure, frostbite, and other cold-related maladies. The exact number of casualties on either side of the conflict is not known, but both sides lost men due to the unforgiving terrain and weather. In an official tally given by the Indian Minister of State for Defense, it was stated that 35 officers and 887 infantrymen of the Indian Army had lost their lives holding the Sakhalin Glacier for India between 1984 and 2016.
So, for those who are watching this, is this still like an ongoing battle for them to say 2016? Has it stopped in 2016, or is it still ongoing? Because if it is, that's still crazy.
Whether the operations on either the Indian or Pakistani side were ultimately successful in the long view remains an open question. Some saw the struggle as an unnecessary competition over land that was eventually non-strategic and thus pointless. But others saw a decisive Indian victory, a daring military operation that secured tactical high ground that would have a long-term effect in Pakistan's trade routes with China. To this day, India still controls all 43 miles of the Sakhalin Glacier, as well as its various tributaries, and each of the 3 main passes of the Saltoro Ridge that were won in the operation itself. Pakistan still considers it a humiliating defeat. And so the unrelenting ghost of partition continues to loom over India and Pakistan, 2 nuclear powers with a combined population of over 1.5 billion people.
That is pretty scary.
I dare you.
When you think of it like this, Pakistan wanted to take the bridge. They carried on going. They carried on fighting for this exact same thing. Kept on going and going and going and going, thinking that they could get away with it and take the bridge. When in reality they knew it wasn't theirs. Yes, it wasn't a strategic position. However, it is still land which isn't theirs. And that's why I completely understand why India went and did what they did. They set up and were like, no, we're not going to take this anymore. And they got the information, they got it correct. For them to still be able to hold that glacier to this day, showing they're willing to, like we know, but they're willing to sacrifice their lives. And that's a massive thing, massive thing. And I guess by Pakistan also slowing down that role of the trade routes between Pakistan and China, that also delays Pakistan building up a better military, better economic situation than what India has. Because they've delayed them getting to that situation. Because they've held off these trade passes and places where they could land planes for trade. That's what they've done, and it's worked, and they've held it off. And well played to India. They got the information correct, and now they're still holding that terrain. They've not been able to push through it again, which is mission successful. But anyway, it has been King Sloth. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to comment down below what I should react to next and what you actually thought of this video. Would you say it was an unnecessary combat situation for the Indian military to get involved with? Or would you say it's more of a Pakistan poking the bear and they get what they've got sort of situation? Like, man for 10. Subscribe. Let's get it done. And also get the notifications turned on. It's been King Sloth. See you all in a bit. Peace.